look at all the people. Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're going to call the meeting to order. This is the September meeting of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. I'm the chair, John Davey. I'm going to promote you again. Secretary Robert Williams is here on my left. Vice Chair Tim White is at a fire board meeting in Cameron Park. It's very critical. He's a fire board member here at the fire department in El Dorado Hills. Got to figure out what we're doing to protect our fire services. So Tim's attending that tonight. I don't see John Ramsley or other vice chair in, and I don't see Brooke not in either. So, but we're going to get going underway. Hopefully we don't keep everybody here too long tonight. This is primarily an informational meeting to keep people up to date with what's going on. So we'll call the meeting to order, and the first thing we do is the adoption of our meeting agenda, and I will turn my other officer and say, is there anything else to change? No, you could change everything if you wanted. No. And then the first thing we do when we begin the meeting, we have an opportunity for public comment for items that are not on our agenda. If we want to talk about something that's on the agenda, we'll have a time when we get to those topics. Before we get fully into public comment, I just want to go ahead and note that on August 14th, one of our APAC members, she's a former officer, Kathy Prevost, passed away. Kathy's a resident here in El Dorado Hills, and she's one of my neighbors. And Kathy is vice president of the Bass Lake, or she was president of the Bass Lake Action Committee and founded it, and I'm on that board with her. And Kathy, even when she was ill, she was attending the meetings, she was here virtually, she was watching recordings, she was writing things for APAC, submitting them, and just, a stellar volunteer in our community, and she will be missed. So I just wanted to make note of that tonight. And so thank you, Kathy, for all you've done for us, and we will miss you. So with that, I will go to the room. Are there anybody wanting to make public comment tonight on things that are not on our agenda? Chris, you have a microphone handy?
I think this is working.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, mine was related to today, 9:30 at the Fires Memorial Hall in Diamond Springs. We had our monthly El Dorado County Fire Safe Council meeting, of which I'm a member of that. I founded the Patterson Ranch Fire Safe Council. It's about 900 parcels. The reason why that was important was because there was close to, I would say, 60 people there in the room. I had heard that the room size is about 80, so it was a large group. But there were the stakeholders, which are all of the fire protection districts. They're there represented, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation. These are the stakeholders that usually make a report, participate. But there was an important meeting going on, also a fire district meeting that took some of them away today. Also, Ken Pimlott, who is our president or our chair, he was over in Europe, so Paul Penn took his place. But I just wanted to say about 2 hours of discussion about wildfire safety, preparedness, resiliency, key to this type of a year that we've had. Luckily, to this point, knock on wood, that we're gonna be okay. But I just wanted to mention it as something that is constantly happening, and the community needs to know that it's there, and people are participating at that level. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
No, it's important, and I mentioned we started the meeting that Tim White, our vice chair, a fire board member here at El Dorado Hills Fire, and Cameron Park's in sort of a dire place with their fire service right now. They're not doing their ambulance service anymore. So different agencies are lining up and trying to figure out how they're going to do this, because a mutual support, it's assumed, right? I mean, they do have to make a commitment, but gotta figure it out, because El Dorado Hills is pretty big now, and if we're supporting other communities, then we got to be able to have those resources in place and those agreements. And the same thing, Cameron Park will come down here when there's something. Folsom comes up, so it is a lot. El Dorado County Fire Rescue. So yeah, when we're looking at plan reviews now, that's a critical part of the documentation and analysis is what's your fire, what's your vegetation management plan, what's your fire safe plan. So important topics. Thanks, Chris, for giving us that.
Yeah, I just, to add to what you just said, fire severity and the fire severity zones are critically important in the looking at those areas as you guys are looking at projects in the future of those projects.
Yeah, and tragically, I'm in the insurance business. I'm actually the IT side of it, for 25 years. But yeah, I get emails every day. Carriers are either not renewing or not accepting new policies. It's a crisis point in California, and there are other states, Florida, Georgia, come to mind, that are in similar boat. But California's we really got to figure out what's going on with that. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask. Go ahead. Will you have a microphone next to you? And you're green.
Trying to be green.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't see it specifically on the plan, but the last couple of months, it's kind of been brought up that the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan
Yes.
was potentially going forward to the Board of Supervisors. So I was curious if there's any update in the status on that or information, because I haven't heard it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda. We have an update at the end, but it's just informational. And again, it's the same thing. For some reason, it got heated on social media last night and early this morning. I know that you went in and made a comment, and I cleared some stuff up from, as a resident, as a member of APAC, is that the last time we spoke with the applicants, I want to say it was August or September, well over a year ago. It might have been 2 years ago. When was the 21 when the last planning commission meeting? So that following summer, we talked to them a little bit, and there's nothing new. We know that they're working on the development agreement and with the county staff that is tasked to be in sort of that development agreement committee. My understanding is that, and again, because nothing's been said, is that there's not anything substantive with the plan. It's all the development agreement that's changing. And for the flavor of the room, our findings from APAC that we worked on, I want to say for 10 years, but that I know, we had members working pretty nonstop, and I think we produced a 70-page report. Sorry, Chris, that got to you. I apologize for that, but you got to read it. But our finding essentially was that the plan as it is right now was not consistent with the general plan, that there were elements of it that were less than adequate for the environmental review. We couldn't find a way to support the rezone of the recreational facility zoning of the golf course, and because of the inconsistencies with the general plan, that we didn't see how we could a benefit to the community and allowing the general plan land use map to be changed. So those were our findings. The Planning Commission had a very similar findings, a little more professional, I imagine, as we watched that. But I know that all the planning commissioners worked hard on that on their review. So I know Supervisor Heidel's on. We'll get to him in a minute. And George, is anything? I mean, there's nothing really new under the sun right now, right?
No, there's not.
So
Unless John's heard something, so.
yeah, we had just been hearing at Community Council and here that it was sometime, it was projected at one point for the fall, October, November, December. Community Council, I think it was December. Was that the last? I wasn't here in person for that. I was virtual. So, and we'll go into John here in a minute. So we'll let John chime in when we get to him on that. But nothing new that has been presented to us. If there's changes to the plan, we'll review it and we'll provide our findings. We'll probably have about 2 weeks worth of notice, maybe a month. But I know there's a commitment to have a meeting with the Board of Supervisors here in El Dorado Hills, and then a second meeting in Placerville for the final determination. When that will happen, we're not aware.
So since it was denied by the Planning Commission.
Well, they made a recommendation for denial to the board. They didn't deny the project.
Right.
So I know a lot of people are asking.
They voted against it, right?
They voted against it, but it was a recommendation, not a finding.
So
There was nothing to appeal because it's going to the Board of Supervisors. So, and that's why I know a lot of people are going, well, you have 10 days to file an appeal at the Planning Commission, or you have to start over. Well, that wasn't what that finding was. And it's confusing, the sort of the detail that's involved in that. There are some things that go to the Planning Commission that when they make a determination, that's it. But that wasn't one of them. So,
just wondering what, because I hadn't seen anything in like procedural or county requirements or anything like that for general flow that would have said you can be not approved for recommendation by the planning commission and go direct to board of supervisors? So I'm kind of
Well,
curious.
the
what
first
happens.
crack at the town center apartments 100 years ago, a while ago. The planning commission denied that and went to the board of supervisors anyways without an appeal, and they approved it. Of course, then it got litigated and turned back. They did a different version of the project, it's smaller, and it passed at both the planning commission and the board of supervisors. But that's an instance of when planning commission is providing that advisory recommendation, and it's up to the board to take it or not take it, to consider it in some fashion. So yeah, so it's confusing, but I mean, the project's been around forever. We've been working on it forever.
Understood.
So,
I can add to-
and then I'll go to the room, yeah.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself and not the other voting members of APAC. But at this point, since there has not been any additional changes that we've seen, I can't imagine APAC taking a different position. And I would venture to guess probably the planning commission, unless there's something substantive in this new agreement that's being negotiated, that the planning commission would also perhaps take the same position. My big question to you, John, or actually to other APAC members, is at what point can we expect, and I'm actually directing this to the county supervisors, but when can we expect some kind of understanding of what the nature of the scope and the nature of this agreement that's being negotiated between the planning department and parties X, we don't even know which parties are involved yet. When we can actually identify who the parties are, what's being discussed, and so we can be prepared to react.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have to wait till December to get that
Yeah.
information.
I'd like more lead time, and it was 1 and 2, but I'll chime in that I know that in the initial, in the past, the development agreement was always negotiated with the director of planning and then presented to the board of supervisors. And so now that was one person negotiating with an applicant. So now they have a working group, essentially a committee of, I believe, the CAOs on it, the director of DOT, director of planning, and I want to say also the county auditor controller. I think he chose not to take part in this when we were doing the review, because I think he was kind of throwing his hands up. But so it was a group of like 4 or 5 at a minimum, and I'm sure Supervisor Heidel, he was aware of sort of the structure loosely of how that was working. But it's a better process than having one person decide, right? To have multiple people in there, having the departments that get impacted provide their input to the development agreement negotiations. Whether anything meaningful that's beneficial results from it, it's a negotiation. So, Greg, I know that you had.
The concept that was on social media today, that was just a photo of the old one, the original.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
we
it's
don't
only
need,
part of it. It's
yeah,
not even the
yeah,
full,
that was the southern part. So we don't know if there's negotiations going on between,
We're
Yeah,
negotiating
there are,
with
currently.
with the development agreement, like committee.
okay.
So,
And if they make a significant change to their original application, what happens then? Does it go back to the planning commission for review, or can the board just?
the
vote
development
on it?
agreement is not is really not like the nitty gritty details of the project, the environmental, the impacts that are mitigated. It's essentially negotiating for elements that the county finds beneficial, whether it's to the general fund, whether it's to a local community benefit fee. We've struggled with, well, define community, because the project here, the impacts here, where the dollar's going. It's going to a general fund. It's not a community benefit fee. So there are other elements of that where they pay, a fee. I think all projects now pay a fee for the intelligent transportation system. Before that was a voluntary thing they negotiated. I think now that it's DOT sort of demands it. Affordable housing fee, there's like a $500 per lot at the time of the permits issued that goes into a pool that's separate from the general fund. So there's elements like that they negotiate. The building and construction of capital improvement projects, if they're going to front the money with the repayment, and looks like whether it's from bonds or whether the county is going to reimburse the developer for building things that are beyond. It's hard to get, I mean, and we struggled with that because there are things in there that wasn't that it was confusing. We thought, well, in terms of the community, we're looking for benefit, and that's if you're paying them back. So, but, developing, we'll hear from developers tonight. Developers have a perspective on what they're building, what they're required to build. So, and there was in the back of the room. You have a microphone nearby? Oh, good deal.
Good evening, Chairperson Davey. Dean Getz. The process does leave a lot to be desired, and I think it might be getting better as some of the old guard is left. Specifically, most recently, Gina Hamilton was saying there was 135 planned development units that pertain to this plan. That wasn't true, and under public records produced, the last documentation that wasn't approved was from 2008. So, I mean, we're really stretching things, and when you start really digging into the details, like I thought had happened with what led up to the recommendation denial, and what I continue to believe is in part because this body, APAC, and the CSD emphasized the importance of adhering to Serrano CCNRs. That emphasis on those CCNRs was, I believe, because you understood there were limitations in the CCNRs about unilateral ability to revert residentially zoned parcels to acreage that were in the HOA. We're talking about parcel 5 and 6. And that's even more clear now and today. And I just wanted to come and start getting that on the record as we're leading up to an additional consideration. In 1995, which I don't think any of us were in this room. Oh, you might have been.
Yeah. I built that house in 95, yes.
Of approval in Toronto that the CSD, El Dorado Hills CSD, was required to create an LLAD to maintain the public infrastructure that was being put in as an impact of Toronto subdivision. That was called Melrose. The CSD relied on Parker to create the initial engineer's report, which explicitly identified parcels 5 and 6, the ones that we're talking about doing away with now. And those were explicitly identified as all the parcels in the subdivision were supposed to pay for their share of the public property. That would be the rights of right-ways on either side of Serrano and Silver Valley Parkway, for example, and typically community parks and things like that. What's crazy is rather than managing the Serrano Lighting and Landscape Assessment District themselves, the CSD passed that over to the HOA. And that allowed the HOA to not bill everybody. The Parker controlled HOA, and that is the honest to God truth because the seats were held by people carrying Parker cards, Serrano Associates. So it's Parker control. In 05, let themselves out of that obligation, the obligation to make their contribution to the public property that was transferred to the HOA. And they said it was a subsidy that was no longer required to be fulfilled by none other than parcel 5 and parcel 6. 6 has never been touched to this day, never been developed. Yet it continues to vote as a full-fledged member and violate the California Streets and Highways Code, which says all the lots and parcels benefiting from an LLAD's improvements must contribute to the maintenance of those improvements. So, I mean, it gets really kind of straightforward here. It seems that the CSD and Parker's aim here is to mitigate their non-payment since 05 by eliminating those parcels altogether, which really doesn't do away with that, which I raised that issue directly with County Counsel David Livingston, so did my lawyers. And the statement that the county can completely ignore private agreements is flat wrong. I think he's tried to thread the needle and suggest we don't enforce private agreements. Of course, but when the public comes and says, hey, there's a private agreement here and you're violating it, you don't have a right to railroad right over it just because one party you like and the other one you don't. The wife says, no, I don't want to sell. The husband says, yes, I do. The county says, I don't know who, I'm going to go with the husband. That's absurd. County planners, the CSD representatives in Parker have been, I think we all agree, secretly meeting for months, and it's hard to believe that that's going to be above board. But I would urge APAC again, and I'll close on this, to emphasize and follow the importance of Serrano CCNRs, with which this proposal would violate as it was presented to county planning previously. Thank you.
Christine, and that is one of the questions we asked and did not get an answer at the time at the planning commission hearing. So I imagine if this is before the board again, we will submit a comment, at least one of the comments will be focused on some clarity on that. Yes or no, and I'm sure that people will question it, there'll be additional litigation, but, and I just remind everybody as APAC volunteers, we don't litigate, we're just volunteers looking at this, and the people in the community are free to do what they can do. Ooh,
Can I just add really quickly?
go ahead.
Sorry, Seth. I think that it's pretty clear to me that most of the boards and commissions in this county are political animals, and political capital is hard to come by. And I would urge folks that are interested enough to watch this meeting, follow online, to call a spade, because I don't think it's being done in the light of day. But this pass off is completely on the up and up if it were done right. I'm not suggesting that the HOA couldn't take over the responsibilities, but letting one out while another pays was where the wrongdoing goes. And then when you get down to calling it out, everybody wants to act like I don't get it, or I don't hear you, or I don't whatever. Therein lies the problem. So kudos to APAC for raising the issues and in great detail. Thank you again.
Hi, Sue. Good to see you walk in. Yeah, if you're green, you can go.
So, like was just stated, I agree with that. This is not in the light of day. More and more over the years, the county is not following a normal planning process, and this is what's going on is just way out of line. And I don't think anybody should be complacent with the process of what they're doing, because this project was denied at the planning commission. The developer did not appeal, and I think that was mentioned. So he lost his window to bring it to the Board of Supervisors, and it's been modified. All these rumors are going around because we don't know what they're doing behind doors, which is not legal in my mind. All of it has to be a public process going through they need to go back to the planning department if they're going to revamp their project and go back through like anybody else would have to do and do the right process. We've been watching since we implemented Measure E for traffic capacity that they've been ignoring that also, which, the funding's coming around that they keep moving on that attitude. The county's gonna be sued on this. So I'm so tired of watching this out of normal process and that our county can go along abusing people that stand up to the rule of law and no one should be complacent. So a development agreement is something you devise after your project's approved. You have to get project approval of a project we don't know, and they're already talking about a development agreement that locks in whatever we don't know about for another 20 years. I mean, they're putting the cart before the horse, and I've never seen this done before. If anybody's you've got to get in a project through the process, which is an onerous thing when you're doing a general plan amendment. And then if they get it, then they negotiate for a development agreement. So why are we talking development agreement when this project's already been denied? So I have a lot of concerns.
I've always questioned the development agreement process as well, because I'll talk about the Bass Lake Hill specific plan. We moved here in 95 and 92, they had the EIR for it. The specific plan was approved in 96. It was dozens of individual property owners in that plan. And they had a development agreement that expired in 2016. And the county came back and they opened it back up and redid it. We just redid the development agreement for East Ridge. And in my opinion, a lot of times it's pretty one-sided in terms of the development agreement and where the benefits at. It's typically with the applicant and the county is getting some things that they want. But in terms of community, when we talk about a community benefit fee, again, what community are we talking about? And I know we're unincorporated and we are one big community, save two cities, but the impacts here, the benefit should be here.
Well, you're being left out of the negotiations between the developer and the government, and you're the ones that are being impacted. So, yeah.
Oh.
It's not the county too. I think that one of the comments, if I understood correctly, that Dean was making, had to do obviously with the closed door sessions that are occurring with CSD also, negotiating certain things. And God knows there are lots of ethical issues surrounding CSD and its LLED management at this stage. So if you couple that with pre-existing agreements with regard to the consistency of and the use of certain parcels related to any of these developments, and until that is cleared up, to move forward right now is insanity, and will result in, I'm sure, litigation against both the county and CSD. So it's a time to, again, I agree with you, Sue, that the process seems to be reversed, and that an agreement of this nature, while it's nice to have discussions, should not be classified as an agreement. You have to have a project that has been approved before you move to that stage. And I would hope that the three supervisors that represent segments of El Dorado Hills will, as quickly as possible, be forthcoming and provide us a understanding of what the nature of and the scope of the discussions that are being taken place. Because to call it an agreement at this stage is inappropriate.
CSD is trying to buy this property. They need to have what that property is, and this lingering thing that the county's allowing this developer to do, to be kind of hovering after a denial. It's not clear whether they're stuck on open space or they're going to still give them some kind of underdoor deal to do something that increases the value of the property. If they went with what the planning commission denied the project, is open space, and then CSD would have a better standing position to know what they need to do to try to buy that property if that's their interest. But the county's just putting this over everybody's head for decades is just ridiculous.
So if we work the room, we have one online. Ellen, it looks like your hand is up. I'm gonna go ahead and I push the button to allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute. There you go.
I did.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I just would like to go on record, and I did this at the Planning Commission meeting in Placerville last June, where the Planning Commission voted 5-0 not to approve the rezone plan. And I realize that that's just a recommendation, but once again, the 135 lots came up, and I mentioned this at that meeting, and I'm going to mention it again because I want to go on record. The 135 lots that are being proposed to be used as part of this development project cannot be used unless 2/3 of the entire HOA of Serrano, which is over 4,000 homes, 4,000 members in the HOA, approve releasing those lots, because they've been annexed into Village D1, which my husband and I are residents since 1998 of Village D1, and they've been annexed into our village, and we've been paying some of the subsidies or the fees or whatever you want to call them for those 135 lots for all of these years, and they cannot just take them away and de-annex them without 2/3 of the vote of all of Serrano HOA members. So I'd like to just once again go on record for stating that. And I have no idea what they're planning to do, but if they have not removed those 135 lots, that's going to be a problem.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for making those comments. And the important part of the process is when we participate. So we appreciate your efforts and appreciate you attending tonight.
Thank you.
So, all right. Well, with that, we've gone through our public comments. Oops, I'm going to get them right now. That's our next. Okay, well, the first thing, it's so hard to drive and talk. Get back over here and share this, and then we'll get to that one. Okay, sorry about that. Put it on the screen. So we remind everybody here, if you want to become a voting member of APAC, we want you to, whether you want to or not, but if you want to become a voting member of APAC, volunteer to work on a project review or a subcommittee. And then once you've done that work, you're in. Sorry, it's like the mob. You're in. You can't leave. But APAC members that are already voting members will help you learn about the processes that we go through. And it's entirely possible you can identify a process that's better than what we're doing. So we value the participation, and we look forward to anybody who wants to help out. Okay, and now I can say Supervisor Communications. And I know that John is remote tonight.
Let him speak first, he can talk.
What's that?
Let John speak first.
Okay. John, are you ready to go?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the opportunity here. So relative to Central El Dorado Hills, what I can report is the earliest date is now anticipated to come back to the Board of Supervisors with a meeting in El Dorado Hills, a special meeting, is probably the middle of November, more likely the first part of December. There's been a lot of communications that have gone back and forth between the planning department and the applicant. The county has yet to receive all the information they need to document this. So my guess is the highest likelihood it wouldn't come back before the first part of December, and it may roll into next year. So the last thing that came up was a challenge on greenhouse gases. And I understand that that's now in work in terms of getting the final resolution of that. So we'll all find out that information when we have that public hearing and scheduled in El Dorado Hills, subject to be able to get a facility. But I guess I've heard a lot of opinions and I've seen a lot of opinions. What I rely on is county council to tell me what is legal and what isn't legal. And we can certainly bring up those discussions when we have that public hearing. But I think for the most part, a lot of the information that people believe is factual relative to legal versus illegal with the various provisions the state provides is not completely accurate. I'll leave it at that. So we'll all get a clarification, I believe, from county council when we get into that public hearing. So that's what I have on Central El Dorado Hills. I did want to mention several other things that have been happening at the Board of Supervisors recently. We have now a resolution of intent to modify the cannabis ordinance. There was a settlement agreement with the Alliance, the Cannabis Alliance, that went through the Planning Commission. They heard it. The Board of Supervisors decided we had to separate all of the items under discussion into two categories. One is one that we can move forward with the resolution of intent to modify the ordinance, short order. And then there's some that are going to be longer term evaluations that require a CEQA environmental analysis. And so we've separated into two pieces. That resolution of intent will be coming out very soon. The board has to do the final approval on it. But then the longer term things will come probably in a year and a half. So we've broken that kind of into two different phases, if you will. We're also working on a code enforcement amnesty process for unpermitted properties. And this probably affects properties within Supervisor Turnbow's area much more than it does mine. So he may want to share more on that, but we're both engaged in trying to make sure that the county looks at a fair and equitable way to resolve the fact that in the past, properties have been purchased by new owners from an existing owner without having the proper permitting for additions, expansions, a lot of things. And so we're trying to straighten that out so that there would be this amnesty provision and a certificate of compliance temporarily, but it would cloud, if you will, the title through the title provision. So we've been working with real estate agencies, El Dorado County real estate organizations to try to make sure that those terms are as equitable as we can make them. But there'll be more information on that coming up soon. So if you have one, if you're subject to one of those properties you bought, unbeknownst to additions and other things that happened without being permitted, this would affect you. So thirdly, we did rescind the American Christian Heritage Proclamation. That was strictly a proclamation. There was a lot of objections by various communities, including the Jewish community. So we brought that forward. The board unanimously rescinded that. And the primary reason was it wasn't accomplishing its intent. And the secondary reason was there was pending lawsuits, as we read it, that could have involved a lot of hundred thousands of dollars in defending a lawsuit over a proclamation. And it didn't make any sense to have taxpayer money invested in that kind of a process of a lawsuit. So we rescinded the proclamation. That's behind us now. And I also mentioned that next Tuesday's meeting, the 26th, we have 3 hours set aside for our strategic plan, public hearing portion. Some of you may have participated in the survey that was done. We got over 500 responses to that. It's a very simple 4-question survey asking what are the things that you like about El Dorado Hills County government? What are the things you want to see changed? What services are provided to you, et cetera. So those inputs have all been put together and into an affinity diagram. And again, will be presented at Tuesday's meeting on the 26th, and it'll be in the 1 p.m. type of time frame. So once the agenda gets finalized, we'll know exactly when that's scheduled. But I'm guessing it will be time allocated for 1 p.m. So if you're interested in the strategic plan and what's going on there, that would be the appropriate timing. So those are my summary comments, and Supervisor Turnbull probably has others.
Yeah, let's get back to the amnesty program. And that was one of the biggest issues that I had, because I kicked it back to, to the planning commission about 3 times before I got some kind of clarification, because there was no teeth to it at all. One of the big issues I have is these homes that are they're the 5th owners. It goes down the 5th owner. And the problem is then they have to bring it up to current specifications or current requirements. And that means solar, and that means sprinkler systems. The biggest part of the problem I have with it is it's not right. It's not fair to these people, especially if this person is trying to sell this house and they sell it to this person, and that particular person either has to do the upgrades or that person has to do the upgrades before it's sold. So that impacts the sale of the house. So I'm still working on it. There's been other counties that overlook that. They usually new construction, that's what it should be based on, my personal opinion, because the reason why, if they put sprinkler systems in, that means they have to tear all the sheetrock down. That means it has to be put in place. Then it has to be pressure checked. It requires a 2-inch to come into it to operate this thing. Plus you have to either, if you're on a well, it's got to be a tank, and usually one of these big water tanks can't be put on, any small lots. So that means that this has got to be addressed, and I don't like it. I'm still looking into ways to be able to solve the problem. The biggest thing with the amnesty program, what will happen? They'll go out, inspect it. It meets the safety requirements, and then you get kind of a certificate that it says it meets the safety. So then that way you don't have code enforcement, fining you every day. So that was one of the big issues that I put, because a lot of these are in my district. There's a lot of them. And it's been going on for a long, long time. And it's just not fair to these people is what it is, especially these longtime residents of this county and stuff, and then it impacts on. So that was one of the big things that I worked on. And also we, and the Board of Supervisors, the OES, we hired actually a battalion chief, or putting in place these horrific fires that we've had, and all these emergencies like the floods and snow again and all this stuff. So now we have a staff that's in place to handle these emergencies, and it's going to be a great thing through the sheriff's office, because before they had to pull somebody off to be able to run it. So Lieutenant Morton, and then I don't know who the battalion chief is going to be, but it's going to be coming from El Dorado Hills to operate that. So it's going to be a good thing for the county.
Yeah, George, it's Mike
Yeah.
Lilienthal, Assistant Chief Mike Lilienthal will be the representative from El Dorado. So he's actually an assistant chief, but the compensation the county will provide is at the battalion chief level. So the differential has to be paid for by the fire department in El Dorado Hills. That's who it is. Chief Lilly.
All right, good. Anyway, so it's going to be a great thing. One of the things that also I reached out to FEMA, Diane Grisville, trying to get some kind of housing and stuff for modular homes or whatever, because they have these modular homes sitting all over the place, FEMA does, and they're sitting there and not doing anything. So I reached out to her to see if we could get some kind of support for the people in Grizzly Flat, because I just can't see them going through another winter, especially living in small RVs. It's not fair to them. And we're looking at different ideas, and even through the county and stuff. I've got some ideas that I'm trying to work on to try to be able to solve this problem, because it's just, it's an embarrassment. Let's put it that way. It really is, to see these people in these small RVs and we're not doing anything about it. And especially our own government, state and federal governments, especially when they were promised to be taken care of. So that's one of some of the big things that we're working on. And the heritage thing, I'll tell you about the reason why I voted the way I did, because when somebody attacks my church and involves the congregation, that was one of the reasons I voted the way I did vote for that. Or I probably would have abstained or done something else different. I'm a pastor of the El Dorado Community Church, but when it involves my family, which I feel it's my family, the church, then there's a problem there. So that's the reason why, and I want a clarification, because I know I got beat up a little bit. Why did you vote this way? Why didn't you do it this way? You know what I mean? People don't understand. If they reach out and talk to me or talk to John or us first and get some clarification first before you put something on social media and start attacking us. I just think that is totally wrong. So what is going on? So anyway, and I want to thank John. I mean, it was, let's just put it this way. It's very possible it could have ended up bankrupting the county. And that's just too bad. So anyway, so that's some of the things that are going on. We've been doing a lot. I think the biggest thing was the amnesty program. And like I said, I've kicked it back to the planning commission, code enforcement 3 or 4 times to try to get this thing resolved, because this is a big issue, especially for the people who live here in our county.
Excuse me. Thank you, George.
Okay.
Wow, we're almost an hour into this. We don't have, as I move forward, we don't have guest speakers today, but we do have guests. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ask the supervisors to maybe consider having, if it's gonna happen, have it done in January, because in December, obviously holiday season starting and there's fewer people around, potentially. So just
And
planting a request.
that is something that we've always consistently have said here as volunteers, is that inevitably a big project will come up in November, December, January. And it's tough for volunteers, let alone residents who are hearing about it later. Oh, and Chris.
I heard others speak, and I can't get into the details because I'm a planning commissioner. But I want to make sure that we clearly understand that what we're talking about here is the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan. We're
Yes.
not well, in a general way, we may be talking about the El Dorado Hills specific plan.
They're
But that's an
intertwined a bit.
entirely different subject. So I want to make sure when people are speaking that they're talking about the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan. That's my technical point that I wanted to bring up.
And, I mean, that is a document. When we submitted that, and
Right.
again, I'm sorry, it was 70 plus.
So Chris, let me clarify. The proposal on Central El Dorado Hills does open up and change the El Dorado Hills specific plan as presently proposed, because there would be a land swap relative to the recreational high use designation. So they are related, and it is invested in that, but it's a subset of the Central El Dorado Hills is what the El Dorado Hills specific plan is, but they are related.
And John, that's part of the problem, because people aren't realizing the technical side of what's happening here. But for clarity, if it wasn't for the Central El Dorado Hills El Dorado Hills specific plan, if it wasn't for that project that the applicant has brought forward, we may not be talking about it in the context that Supervisor Hydall just commented on.
Or what Dean had spoke to, or which Ellen had sort of, yeah. So, correct. It's a big, long document, that's for sure. And we're sorry to add your pain on that, but. Oh, Mike Lowenthal.
Got a part-time, so are they still in their fire chief position, plus they're doing OES, or I'm confused? So they're getting close? I thought we had an OES director at the sheriff's department. So now we don't have one, and this is like a part-time, full-time thing, but still has his regular job here, or can you explain that to me, because I'm not real clear?
The biggest thing is going to be full-time. Lieutenant Morton is gonna take charge of that. He's the one that's gonna be handling it all.
That'll be his full-time job,
Yes,
not,
exactly. Designated completely to that, especially when it comes to our emergencies in our county.
we'll devise an OES plan that the county can adhere to, kind of thing that I used to be on a committee that, there was a huge circle of people on OES with one person from the sheriff's department that directed everything. So
That's
there
gonna
was
be
like
him.
marching orders, the minute there was a disaster, everybody knew their place. Are they gonna bring that back, kind of thing, or?
Well, I'm not sure on that, but I'm gonna tell you right now, Lieutenant Morton is the one that's gonna be in charge, and he still will answer to the sheriff, but he's in charge of that particular, that's what that position is, especially, that's all he's gonna be doing is OES.
That'll be his full-time position.
Right, exactly.
And John, if I could add to that, the Board of Supervisors has long time recognized that we have an opportunity to improve the Office of Emergency Services, which has been strictly run by the Sheriff's Office in the past, with participants from fire and other agencies, including the utilities, PG&E, involved when there's some form of an emergency, a disaster type situation, and they actually have daily meetings. What we recognize is that a lot of other counties are utilizing a broader perspective, i.e. get more of the first responders involved with the day-to-day operations. And that's what this is. It's an approach to add details or expand the capabilities of our OES, because it's not only now going to be the sheriff's, it's all the fire services within El Dorado County represented by El Dorado Hills. And I think we're really going to find that there's a lot of improvement that's possible there relative to alerts, relative to notifications of where fires, relative to preparedness to take on fire disasters. That's the primary benefit, is wildfire interface and just general fires is what we will get out of this as an improvement over just having the sheriff's office operate OES. So from the board's perspective, I think we're pretty much unanimous that this is a step forward. It's similar to what other counties have done, and we think it's moving in the right direction.
Also, they've contracted with the El Dorado County Food Bank too.
So comprehensive approach, that's what it sounds like.
Coming from Camino, where we had a siren that would go off in the mill, basically everybody that worked there, 300 people, that siren would go off and those guys were all firefighters, basically. That's no longer there. So, and I don't know if we have a fire department there or not. So when I see what happened to Lahaina, and they've lost all their alert systems, it kind of brought it back to my home. And maybe since you're listening and I got this moment beyond the 3 seconds, this to consider these rural areas that have no, those type of alarm systems have been taken out and the personnel is gone, and where I never used to worry about fires before, I have a lot of those concerns. So I hope that the OES that's here considers those rural areas where the fire critical areas are.
Yeah, and I know that Chief Lilienthal has ended up responding in part of El Dorado Hills Fire and that mutual aid in some of the farther places. I know, and you know, he's on strike teams that go all over the state. So I know that his concern will be notifying, and you know, it's hard to do. Like you said, a lot of those elements. You know, when I was a kid, we had sirens that went off and they were tested. I grew up in East Sacramento. I don't think they go off anymore. I don't think I remember.
Well, they took ours out. I'd really like to have something back up there that
Yeah.
the whole town could hear it. We knew that there was an urgency when it
Yeah.
would go off, and we really miss it.
There also is an app that you could download,
You know,
and it's called Red Alert, and you can get it
I
downloaded to
like
your
the
phone.
siren the whole town can hear. They can pull the horn,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you don't have to rely on this, whether the power's on or not, or your battery's okay.
a lot of times I don't like to look at my cell phone, but yes. And yeah, so, but I, you know, just from Lieutenant Morton and Chief Lilienthal, I know those are two people that are very community focused. So fingers crossed that nothing comes up for them,
Yeah.
but that we see improvements. So, all right.
Before you leave the supervisor's comment, we addressed quickly, Supervisor Heidel said with pretty clear conviction that there wasn't necessarily, what was being said wasn't necessarily accurate with regard to the legalities of the changes in the El Dorado Hills specific plan. I'd like him to, if he's willing, address that. What's the basis the facts that are being presented aren't accurate, or what is he relying upon?
I haven't ditto that.
I think I heard most of that question, Dean, but what I'm talking about is the process. What's required relative to development agreements? What's required relative to the planning commission recommendations versus the board of supervisors making decisions on general plan amendments, specific plan amendments, a new specific plan, zoning changes, all of those things. That is beyond the scope of what the planning commission can handle. People don't necessarily understand that, but it's pretty prescriptively defined by state law. So we rely on county council to do that. With respect to the HOA and CCNRs, I think you've received several letters that says that's not the county's responsibility to enforce any of those provisions. That is a civil suit type of process if you have to go to that level. It's between the homeowners association and the developer, and which is basically the Parker development project that they're proposing with Central. The county has no role or jurisdiction to deal with anything related to CCNRs. So that's the separation. I think you're aware of that, but that's what I meant by those comments.
I very much appreciate the clarification, John, and I very much respect your willingness to divulge that. So a couple of things. One is I'm not afraid of getting to the bottom, the nitty gritty of the facts. And that's where I think people end up getting harmed along the way, like Supervisor Turnbull had suggested, where they don't have all the facts and they're going on a rumor. So I will send to your office the correspondence between County Counsel Livingston, Billingsley, Assistant County Counsel Billingsley, and my lawyers and other lawyers, so we can start to get to the bottom of that. I would highlight for you, just so that you know, it is a fact that the applicant completes a form and says that they're not violating any private agreements when they apply, and the county is being indemnified for the applicant's assertions. And beyond that, the process goes and flows. So, for you to broad brush this and suggest that the county doesn't enforce private agreements, while that statement is true, you're also not allowed to ignore private agreements. And that's what we're asking you to recognize, and that's what county council is facing. You cannot ignore a private agreement between the parties and go off and rezone something for one party in dispute with another party and suggest it's your police power or your right or your land use right. And we've identified that chapter and verse in writing to county council's office. So I will send that to you, because I wouldn't want the supervisors to burn their political capital on misunderstandings where you're wronging the community and you just didn't understand how you were doing it and doing it anyway. So I'll send that to you, and I very much appreciate the insight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. But again, I rely on county council. They're obviously closest to interpreting the Subdivision Act and various other things that the state imposes upon all counties in California, all 58 counties. So no, I would welcome reading that and better understanding it, because if it's something we have to go to a state agency to get a reading on, whoever that may be, then maybe that's the right thing to do. But I'm really relying heavily on them and their expertise, because that's where they are subject matter experts, and most of the board members obviously are not. So thank you.
Well, let me just add, in the interest of transparency and clarity, because again, I really prefer more information to be out there than less. It's such a small world. One of the three law firms that I'm using in this county, two in the Serrano assessment litigation, one of them has actually represented Assistant County Counsel Billingsley when he was previously at another county, I think it was Humboldt.
Yep.
So my point is, it's a very small world. I think at the bottom of the barrel, I think all of these folks, including yourself, want to do right by the parties. And I mean, I think you went into this with the idea that you can't have a preconceived idea that it's a no, even though you maybe ran on open space protection. And I respect that. But at the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. And I think this group and others that maybe aren't here tonight would just appreciate being truly heard. And so if you're suggesting that, I am really in favor of getting to the bottom of that. I will continue to be transparent with you, and I'll do my best to give you all the facts. Thank you, John.
Okay. So, away we go. So as I was saying, we don't have a guest per se, but we have people here that are going to address some projects. And Michelle and Craig are here tonight. And this is, the Summerbrook project was approved in 2007, 2008. It was a long time ago. And essentially, DOT has made a determination that the traffic signal in, I don't have much here. I'll just show you. So this, it's a 29, if I'm remembering correct, 29 lot project. Numbers are hard sometimes. And it's along Green Valley Road across from Pleasant Valley Middle School, Pleasant Grove Middle School. And so the project site's there sort of in white, if you can see behind me on the screen. And there's a intersection, the western intersection of Deer Valley Road at Green Valley Road, that was conditioned via this project to provide a traffic signal. In the years subsequent to 2007, 2008, DOT has determined there's no existing traffic warrant that justifies the traffic signal. And so, you know, we'd submitted some comments because the applicant had requested eliminating that. You know, a traffic signal is at least $1 million to put in, $1.5 million, getting more expensive every day. So they had pursued a course where they would have this condition of approval sort of waived. We submitted comments, many neighbors in that area submitted comments. And I talked to the Blue Mountain Communities folks in a couple of years now, I think. But we had discussions, we talked about it, and, you know, and I think Tim and I worked on this with Blue Mountain. And Michelle and Craig have stepped in the last year over this. You know, it was an infrastructure benefit to the community, and so to waive it away seems sort of short-sighted, even though they can't justify the warrant for the signal. What can we do? Where can we make this better? I think I'll leave it at that. We've talked to you guys for a long time. Did you want to come up, or you just want to use is there a microphone?
Yeah, there's one here, or they could,
Yeah, and I believe that the microphone on this podium is not plugged in, but
you guys want to come up here and sit here, you guys can, so. I'll move over here.
there's a microphone. And there's a microphone right there too.
Yeah, okay. She might want to.
So you've waited all night for this. Okay. And do you need anything? All I had really was that. Is that okay?
Oh, thank you. I have a couple sheets I can certainly pass on.
So yeah, if you want to be at that microphone that's up there, the green one that's on the podium, it's probably the best one. If you want to leave it right there, that's cool. As long as people can hear you.
Well, that's for the people not here.
Yeah, it's the people online in our recording.
Oh, yeah.
All right, pass these out. Do you want to maybe upward down like that? I'll pass this on.
Yeah, I can fill you in a little bit. We, as John said, we spent a lot of time on this thing with DOT and neighbors and public. Thought it'd be a real quick project, ended up being about 1.5 years. But, you know, there's obviously a concern that this was just a developer trying to get off the hook on a condition to save money. And it was really more than that, in the sense that we're talking a 29 lot subdivision facing the cost of rebuilding an entire interchange. It was kind of an anomaly created by the early interpretations of Measure Y, where any project that contributed to a cumulative impact of level of service F or worse was required to build whatever it had to build to mitigate the problem. So we end up with a very small project with a very big condition imposed on it. And this was back in 2007. So when our clients came into El Dorado County and they're doing their due diligence and talking to planning and the DOT, they were told by both departments that, no, we don't want to signal out there. It's not warranted. We do not put in traffic signals that do not meet warrants. That's a policy, it's common policy in a lot of different jurisdictions. There's reasons for that. They just say it's actually safer to not have a thing there, signal in some cases. And they're a maintenance problem. They cost a lot of money to operate and maintain. And so they just didn't want it. So there was talk about, well, how about paying your fair share? And we'll put it in an account someplace and we'll consider that mitigated. The trouble is, this project is not in the county CIP, and there's no mechanism for sticking money aside for a particular project, which is something I've been bugging this county about for a long time. But the long is what we did is, as you alluded, is tried to come up with some idea, some project that we could do or contribute towards that would be beneficial to this immediate community, the Deer Valley, Green Valley neighborhood. And there was talk about contributing towards a roundabout at, was it Bridlewood on, yeah. That was rejected because it's, first off, they don't have any identified funding for it. It's a pretty expensive project. And that would just be money that probably disappear someplace. And it also, there's no proximity to the project for the neighborhood that you want to try to benefit. So we looked at a couple of different things. We talked about getting one of those signals that gives you your speed, and if you're going over the speed limit, it says slow down, DOT wasn't interested in that. That's too distracting. And once again, it's a maintenance headache. And so we gave up on that. The long and the short of it is, we did some research, talked to some traffic safety experts and said, any ideas? We had the Green Valley Corridor Study, which gave some ideas in terms of fixing some driveways and things like that, which was kind of a tough thing for us to do as a project, knock on people's doors and say, can we fix your driveway? But anyway, what they came up with was lighting it, just good old fashioned light. They said that it can improve the safety of an intersection by as much as 40% in terms of cutting accidents and close calls. So,
sorry, we should note, there has not been an accident here
No.
reported.
Okay, yeah, so you can, that's how we should qualify because
Yes.
I live over there and,
Well,
Yeah,
we
we-
met with some of the neighbors
Yeah.
tonight that said, no,
Yeah.
we hear that.
we hear the screeching tires and the crunching every once in a
Yeah,
while.
so,
But anyway, we checked the accident reports for the county and there's no reported accidents at all for that intersection. So anyway, we did the research as far as having the engineers go out, look at the site, and they came back. They can put up 4 street light stanchions, one in each quadrant of the intersection. And our clients, Blue Mountain Communities, has agreed that the cost of maintaining those lights, electricity, and maintenance will be covered by the HOA. And we make provisions for that right away. The maintenance costs are pretty slim. The LED lights, they don't burn much electricity. The fun part will be getting power to them and dealing with PG&E and everything, but we can do that. So that's our proposal. We brought that back to DOT. They like it. They said, well, we're not going to issue opinions, whether it's better than a signal or not, but we like the idea. Good thinking. So we made that our proposal. We are on the agenda Tuesday morning. I think we're a 9 o'clock timed item. Did I see that correctly?
thank you for letting us. I know I reached out as
No,
soon as we got the date. So thank you for letting us.
and I apologize because I meant to reach out to you and then I was delivering a kid to college and I kind of forgot. So, but
What were your
no, we appreciate
priorities?
it. What's that? Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, Tim and I, we've been in conversation with Blue Mountain and with Sean Craig for a while about this. And, some of the things that DOT had proposed, I understand why they proposed them because there's an opportunity to do something.
Right.
That the Bridlewood Roundabout is nearby, but there's no impact from this project on Bridlewood. Bridlewood, the intersection, there'd be no benefit to this project by putting it there. I believe there were things like talking about correcting some deficiencies at Cameron Park Drive and Green Valley Road. It's like, well, again, it's on Green Valley Road, but it's not where this project is. And I know that there was some talk about further down. Again, the impact is here, and we're looking for what the mitigations can be here. So we appreciated that the conversation continued and that you guys kept us in the loop on that. I'll just turn it back to you if there's.
Yeah, I think one other thing is outside of the traffic modeling that had been updated, the county updated, there were improvements. So every other condition has
Yeah.
been satisfied. So turn lanes, Silver Springs Parkway, signalization, all of that went in, that helped contribute to it. So it wasn't just the county's traffic command model was updated and that all of a sudden negated any need. There were also a lot of significant improvements. And in fact, if you go back to the 2014 Green Valley Road Corridor Study,
Yes.
it highlights this and actually specifically says, and it's because based on the turn pockets, really,
Yeah.
that need was no longer there.
I meant to throw a slide up that had the old configuration.
Yeah.
And this changed about the same time, 2014, when Silver Springs Parkway was going through. And Silver Springs Parkway sat there from 2014 till 2021.
Yes.
Turned off.
But that project, Silver Springs was conditioned to provide some of these, and they were there first, so they did some, they did the bike lanes, they did the turn pockets and,
Blue Mountain did that.
but yeah, but Silver Springs is, they
Oh,
bought,
got
they
it. Yeah,
bought it, yeah. So, so we know there've been improvements, and I think we even talked on the phone in that Green Valley Corridor study, you know, that's comprehensive for the entire corridor. But one of the findings in that study was that, you know, the middle school's internal circulation was deficient. The middle school should be working on their deficiency of their circulation. The Silver Springs Parkway, it essentially removed one of the driveways from the middle school. The driveway's still there, but unless you're in a truck or an SUV, you're in a high center. So they lost that, and I thought, well, it's very odd that they would tell the school that they needed to do something to improve their internal circulation, but the road reconfiguration removed one of their driveways. So I appreciate that. That was one of the things we talked about. It's like, I don't know if the school would entertain something, but I think this is an effort to strike a balance here and provide some improvement and some mitigation for the safety, which was our concern. So,
Especially in that location, because right now it's black as pitch out there at night.
yeah.
So there's not even any ambient light. So
Yeah, and as-
this will help a lot.
And, you know, I know that we're off on our projections in terms of growth and development in that area, which is one of the reasons the Bass Lake Road is not a four-lane road.
Right.
We can talk about that later. But, yeah, you know, and I know that Green Springs Ranch, it's sort of a rural environment, and that's what the neighbors want. But the amount of traffic on that road and at night, even though it's not heavy during the day and the commute times, we get into fall, winter when it's dark, late and early, it's, you know, there's some benefit to that. So I know that I talked to Michelle about the cost for this project. Is it significantly, I mean, it's 4 streetlights. That's not an insignificant cost. So, but
It's quite a bit cheaper than a traffic signal.
yes,
No doubt about it.
but
If
there's
we-
still something that's coming to the community that's a benefit. So,
Exactly right.
Yeah, when we met, as I mentioned, we met with neighbors and there's a couple other requests, so we're gonna keep working with them too, to see. I mean, I think they like the idea of lighting. It does provide a safety aspect. Having a street light there, especially when there is no traffic on those times of day, then starts to create that. But, you know, they had some other 29 5-acre lots. It's not a ton, but it is right there when they don't exist. So we're going to keep working with them on that and see what else we can be doing specific to their community, so we can be part of it.
and again, technically this is Rescue, not El Dorado Hills, but it's a project we reviewed
Yes.
100 years ago. So,
Well, and you have a good reach. So
and
really
it's
helpful
across
now.
the street from, yeah. So, well, are there any questions? Are you ready for any questions? Or?
Sure.
Have you actually started any building yet?
Yes. There's about 5 houses under construction right now. We had actually, it's kind of an unusual circumstance where, because their tentative map was approved so long ago, it was going to expire. And, but they wanted to resolve this issue. So they went ahead and bonded as if we're going to build the traffic signal and finalized the map so that they could build their models, and they got a couple of production homes going up. It's going to be a nice project.
Any other questions in the room? Okay, so you have the microphone there? Oh, it's right there. Okay.
so I didn't really, I wasn't gonna talk to this, but it goes back to Measure Y, Measure E, and not specific to this, but it's again annoying. You know, Supervisor Heidel said, we know the law, and so we're abiding by it according to council, but I don't know that council knows land use and these measures. And Measure Y was, the first one is pretty strict. I mean, it was black and white. If you got your project, you abided by these really strict policies, and I don't know, I know that Angelo Sakopoulos is really upset because he approved most of his projects under those strict requirements, which that's why he's facilitated all the infrastructure, is because he had to. They modified it in '08, and then we re-implemented it with some softer language in, 2018. But when you do an agreement that has those harder requirements, I don't know how DOT can just say, well, we're gonna modify them now. So I don't know what the law is. I mean, this is not specific really to you, but I'm seeing it done a lot.
That was our question when this
it's
came
like-
through. It's a
because
condition
this
of
is-
approval,
it
so.
was, It was legislation adopted by the voters. It's not like CEQA that you can kind of get around it or renegotiate. It was the law. It's like a rock. And they're doing the same thing with all these other initiatives that we passed, which has been really frustrating. And so I just see this as, well, wait, how do you justify, and maybe it is, I mean, Green Valley is pretty scary. I mean, it's just, there are I have friends that moved away from there because they were worried of dying. So I don't know, I haven't looked at this project specifically, but I get up in arms when I hear that negotiation with DOT over a law and requirement when they got this project approved, it's just kind of getting blown up. So that's my kind of question, concern, is legally how can.
That was I think one of our initial things, like, well, wait a minute, it's a condition of approval. It's not something, and, and to Tim's credit, that's always something that he always questions when things get changed after, years later. And a lot of them are 20-year projects, and the institutional memory leaves the county in terms of staff, and sort of the memory of why things happen, even though it's in black and white. But
And then they just hack away at all the conditions, so.
And yeah, that was, I think, Tim especially, that was a concern. It's like, wait a minute, if we're going to be horse trading after the fact, we should be able to do it two ways and not just one way. And, I don't think we moved too far on this until Craig and Michelle became involved when we started discussing it. It's like, hey, what's possible? What else can we do? And I understand DOT's going, hey, they don't want a lawsuit by installing a traffic signal. It's not warranted because that's their concern, right? But you and I are like, well, how could that be bad? But
And maybe there is something that still needs that mitigation. It's not that, but I think you still have to acknowledge that was required, and how do you?
Yeah.
And I also don't go along with well, back then we measured these roads at these, we had engineers that did it this way, but now we've got engineers that'll say it's at A and B, when back then it was at F and B, It's
or the
like-
standards changed, or the
It's like, wait a minute,
manuals
how did
changed.
it
Yeah.
get better when we added all this traffic to it, and, when did that happen? So
And
it makes you kind of cynical about the process of
Yeah.
how did the roads get better when you're adding all this stuff?
as somebody who moved here, like I'm part of the problem. I built that house in '95, but I was looking at these things. Okay, well, that project's coming, or was on well, it wasn't talking about it. Silver Springs was talked about. There's going to be a new Bass Lake Road, and they told us in 2 years it'd be there. Well, 26 years later, there was. But so those some that. But I'm odd. I looked at that stuff back then, and not everybody does that. They sign the papers and then move in. I think for Tim and I, as we looked at the process, is that we appreciate the fact that we're engaged enough to hear what we were saying and look for some other solution, because DOT wasn't going to give it to them. And I know it got to the planning commission, and they pulled it at the planning commission because of the community opposition, but DOT seemed to think it was a slam dunk, and the community had something to say. So I just appreciate the fact that we were able to talk about it and find something, and doesn't put DOT in peril, even though, again, I don't know how a traffic signal is unsafe, but then again, I also look at Town Center turning in Town Center Drive in Latrobe, and that is unsafe with the traffic signal, so, yeah. So, so
And part
that's how
of,
we
just to
approach it.
clarify on when they updated it, they, at some point, somebody determined there was gonna be over 12,000 units on Valley Road. And when they updated that, I said, okay. That's what started to change the model, and it wasn't that they changed the way in which they were doing
Well, they did change some of the highway manual.
Caltrans.
Yeah, but also, my understanding was that a traffic analysis for Dixon Ranch triggered this relook at that intersection. There's 5-acre parcels,
It's 1 to 2 acre parcels.
yeah, but they're 5-acre home sites,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and I think they've been after 20 them, maybe not that project. Okay, my memory's fading. But, so we'll, if, unless you have something else you want to share, obviously, we're eager to hear how this is resolved, and that there's some safety benefit that the community obviously is paying attention right there. And, yeah, my kids are out of school, but I was all over there all the time for the middle school and for elementary and driving up and down Green Valley Road. So, I think improvements are important. If we can realize them, then, and we're in agreement that we can realize them, then, we're eager to get something done here. So, but thanks again for hearing us and for entertaining the discussion. We appreciate that.
Thanks for all the time you guys have given us. Appreciate it.
Sure.
The first meeting on Tuesday, is that the Board of Supervisors meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
It
so I'll
was-
check the agenda.
There's a public notice for it.
It's,
time specific, right?
yeah, it's a time specific at 9 AM, I think because they have a pretty hearty agenda. Looks like.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like with a 3-hour.
Yeah.
presentation.
Oh. Yeah. There is a public notice for it. So, in addition to the
Yes.
supervisor's
Yes, there was.
agenda, so. Right.
Okay, cool.
Unless there's any questions online, I don't see any hands up. All right. Well,
Thank
you're
you
on
very
the- I
much.
appreciate you guys taking the time to be here and in person.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So next up, making George and Jean wait all night again. Creekside Village specific plan. And I'm gonna actually, I have your version. I'll switch that. It's a little, the colors changed when I added it to ours, so I'll switch to yours. So let me, I'm gonna hide this and go to here. Sorry about that. Almost there. And do you want to drive your slides? After I get it set up, you can
Sure.
drive it if you want to, or you can just yell at me. Gosh, I'm almost there. There we go. Okay, now we're in business. Make sure I'm on it. The microphone in front of you.
I do.
Yeah, and then forward, backwards, forward, backwards.
Perfect.
The right button forward. So George is here from Win Investments, and we should probably describe this a little bit. You guys have done some work on this in the past. It was a property that was in the business park that a lot of El Dorado Hills is very familiar with now because it was the property that was identified for Project Frontier. In 2017, I want to say the Business Park Association had some property owners, and they're concerned that, the absorption rate inside the business park was very slow. I remember I was in high school in the 80s, and that there was a new business park in El Dorado Hills, and here we are. Oh gosh, it's a long time. I'm pretty old now. The absorption rate is still not what it was. So they wanted to de-annex this property, 200 plus acres, 208. And Win Communities is involved in this now, and they did have this proposal. You talked to us many times in that 2017-18 forward timeframe. Had a scoping meeting in 2020.
Yep.
And it was virtual because that was the time back then. But with the Project Frontier being taken off of the county's books, we're just back here tonight to talk about this Creekside Village project again, and that just a reminder, I wanted to let everybody know that they've had a lot of engagement with the communities right there south of the highway. A lot of the communities that were concerned when the project first came up, that were very concerned when Project Frontier was presented. And I know that you've met with many of the HOAs there and are continuing to meet with them. And I would leave it to you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm George Carpenter with Wind Communities, and with me tonight is Gene Endicott. He's part of our community outreach team. And I've got a presentation here that I'd like to go through with APAC. It's going to cover a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are today, what our project is, what it looks like going forward, where we are in the process, and then at the end, maybe talk a little bit about coming back to APAC when we get a little bit farther in the process. APAC has their technical review committees, and so we welcome the opportunity to come back in the future and talk to APAC whenever you'd like us to come back. To go back in time a little bit on this, this is an exhibit here of the business park property, and it's the property that runs right down the middle. And on one side is the Blackstone community, and on the other side is the Heritage community, and at the southern end is the property we're talking about. And I got involved in this property about 7 years ago, and at the time we were looking at it, we were interested in purchasing it, and talked to some business park owners and the Chamber of Commerce. And what we were hearing was that the business park needed to be revisioned, and that it had been built in the 80s, but only about a third built out. It had a build out to like 2080. And in fact, county staff did a report in 2016 at the direction of the Board of Supervisors to try to come up with strategies about how to improve the business park. We went then and talked with business park owners and came to the conclusion that the property probably made sense to de-annex. And so the business park owners voted in 2018, 92% of them voted to de-annex the business park. And so we thought, well, okay, this does make the sense that we thought. In 2021, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission also prepared a study, and they were looking at strategies for increasing prosperity at the business park. And they kept coming up with the same conclusion. There's a lot of vacant land, but realized that a broad mix of uses would really help. That included things like residential units. And they thought it would just be critical to the ultimate success to have an opportunity for people to live closer to the business park who might be able to work there. And so we then started on a process to look at why, does this site make sense for housing? And when we looked at the surrounding land uses, you can see that it's got housing on both sides of it from Heritage and Blackstone. And then to the north of it is John Adams Academy, which is a K through 12 charter school, a very popular one. And then to the south is the future high school site. And so when we looked at it from a land use perspective, it made sense for housing. And then when we looked at it from site characteristics, the site is relatively flat by El Dorado County standards. It's got infrastructure near it, and it's got few environmental constraints. And so we thought this would be an opportunity to provide some regional connectivity of connecting Blackstone with Heritage, with the trail system and open space system, and then even access into the business park. And then in 2019, we proceeded forward with the J6 hearing with generally the property that's seen in this exhibit here. And it's the property that is kind of in the center lower right is the Creekside Village property. And this particular exhibit here shows you the types of lots that we have compared to the types of lots that are in the Heritage community. One of the things that we learned as we went through the process in 2019, 2020 was people had a hard time envisioning what the lot types looked like. But as we got into the J6 process in 2019, we started coming up against some opposition to housing on this property. We heard that the property needed jobs. That was a better land use. And so at the time, it was one of those situations where we kind of only know what we know. We heard people in opposition at J6. We had a scoping meeting. We heard opposition. And so we thought, well, maybe there is a different use that could be for this property. And at the time, Dermody approached us. That's the company that proposed Project Frontier. out of the blue and just said, hey, we would like to propose this warehouse use here. And so we said, you know what, maybe that makes sense here. And so we entered into a purchase and sale agreement with them. It had a non-disclosure agreement with it. And so we had to step back and completely step out of that process. And so I just want to make crystal clear to everybody here and everybody listening online, we are not Dermody. We're not the company that proposed Project Frontier. So Project Frontier, we know where that went up until they processed an application until May of this year. And in May of 2023, they withdrew their application. And so shortly after that application was withdrawn, we were contacted by members of the Blackstone community and the Heritage community about other uses for this property. And we then went and met with the neighbors and talked to them about what would be the right uses here. Met with a couple of groups at the Heritage Homeowners Association building and at the Blackstone Association building. And we plan to have more. John Rasler and I have been trying to get a meeting set up so we could meet with the Four Seasons folks. But what we heard over and over at these meetings were two major complaints. One was a lack of transparency in the Project Frontier process, and then the concern about large trucks going up and down Latrobe Road. And so I have said this in other meetings in the past. I want to be a reliable source of information on this property and what's being proposed here and what the planned uses are. And so I'm willing to meet and sit down and talk with anybody about it. And like I said, willing to come back to APAC anytime that there's an interest in having me back. So, just to finish off maybe about our land plan, this is the land plan that we submitted to the county. We processed this land plan up until October of 2021. At one time, we did have a component where we proposed to do a 50-acre park on the north side of this in conjunction with the Community Services District, but that approach has gone away. So this map right here represents about 918 single-family houses, and I want to make crystal clear, we're only proposing single-family houses. We are not proposing multifamily apartments, or we're not proposing any kind of affordable housing. We have 13 acres of parks, and combined with open space, I think we're up to about 40 acres. But the idea of this land plan was to come with a range of housing types and choices. We've heard, over and over, there's a lack of housing for people who want to work in the community. And so what we're trying to achieve is an opportunity for that. We've heard, questions about, what's the housing prices going to be? And we don't know, but we do want to try to hit a price point that is not currently available in El Dorado Hills. And when you look at this land plan, there are two brown parcels that have not been lotted out yet, but we are proposing those at a density of 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre, which would lend itself to smaller lots and smaller housing types that might be more attainable for younger working families or people who have larger houses and want to move down. The final thing I'll talk about the land plan is that we do have some proposed trails and open space. We do surveys, and that's the thing that we hear more than anything else from new home buyers is access to trails and open space. As we met with community groups, we listened and to what they wanted to see in this land plan. And so the next couple of slides, I'll talk about what we heard. But one of the first things we heard was an interest in some neighborhood commercial type uses. And so one of the things that we've changed on our land plan from what we had in 2021 was that we've added 1.8 acres of commercial, and that's the little red dot that you see at Latrobe Road and Royal Oaks, kind of in the center of the screen. And this size retail site, this is proposed at 1.8 acres. It could probably handle 5,000 to 7,500 square feet of retail space. And the types of uses you might see there would be coffee shops, yogurt sandwich shops, salons, I don't know, maybe even laundromats. And we have a site in Elk Grove that we're building right now, and this is the site plan from it. It's got a coffee shop and a couple other small uses, and so we figured this is a pretty good sample to know that this would be the right size parcel. And then this is a Starbucks that we own and developed in Sparks, Nevada, just to give you a sense of what something there could look like. This shows a drive-through, and we're not necessarily proposing a drive-through here. I just wanted to give the community a sense of what kind of thing we were proposing. The other thing we heard from our friends over at Heritage were that the environmental resources that run through the Heritage Preserve are really important. And there is a creek that runs through our project that dumps into the preserve. And so this is a map here that shows the overall preserve. And what we wanted to make sure is that our neighbors in Heritage know that we're aware of their concerns about this. We are going to have a site meeting out there on October 3rd with some of the representatives to do a site walk and make sure that we understand the obligations that Heritage has to this environmental preserve area, so that we make sure that we don't make their situation any worse by what we're proposing to do, and that we implement the best management practices that we can through development of our project. The other thing that we heard was from both our neighbors at Heritage and our neighbors at Blackstone were an interest in planning of the future park. And I think there's a perception that park planning in this part of the community has not been necessarily representative of what the residents wanted. And so this is a sample drawing that we had our landscape architect put together. And I want to make sure I'm crystal clear about this. This does not represent anything that we've talked to the Community Services District about. We have not talked to residents about. This is just something we came up, and so it's a sample only. But to give a sense of scale of what kinds of park uses could go on this site. And so in the middle is a green area that is large enough for like a 60 by 80 soccer field, which would be like a U8 or U10 type size. There's a basketball court here, some sand volleyball, some playground area, and then in the lower right corner is the small retail commercial site. This park area then connects to a trail that then leaves off the site. And oh, you know what? Sorry, I went past one slide here. We also asked our landscape architect to put together some imagery so people could get a sense of what this looked like in some real scale. And so that's what this image is here. And we also have a drawing like this in the room tonight. This park then leads to offsite the trail system that goes to the west over towards the future phases of Heritage. And so this is what it would look like as it leaves. There's a trail that runs along the south side of the creek. It would have open fencing adjacent to the backyards that are along the south of it. And then this is an exhibit of what you would see if you were walking down that trail, walking away from the large park. There's also a small park that we've proposed in the center of our community. And we haven't done much programming on that, but I did want to make sure that that we had something to give people a sense of what kind of scale that site would have. And it's a smaller park. I think we're looking at like 5 to 7 acres for this park. Definitely a neighborhood park feel for that. And then one last issue I wanted to address that we heard from folks that live in Blackstone were concerns about lighting and the dark sky feel that exists both in Blackstone and in Heritage. And we have committed to both communities that we will minimize lighting to the extent that we can, only putting lighting where it is required for safety purposes. So that would be like at intersections and major waypoints, so that people didn't get lost, that type of thing. But definitely going to try to avoid street lights, and any house lighting would be down shaded. And so we'll do our best to try to mitigate that. Before I get to that slide, maybe I can go to that. Oh, maybe go to that slide right there. This is a slide talking about our process going forward. And I know we have a number of studies we have to complete. We have a traffic study that is currently being prepared. We're doing a fiscal impact study. We have to analyze our water supply. I met with the school district, and we need to do some work with them to figure out how to handle students. Latrobe School District has 150 students right now in the entire district. They have 2 small campuses, and so we need to figure out how to address the impacts of the school district. Fire protection is definitely a really big issue that we want to make sure to address, and all the other issues that go along with analyzing the impacts to a project like this. Our goal is to be before the Board of Supervisors by the end of 2024, and we have a schedule that if things continue to progress, that we should be able to make that. The reason we're looking to doing that is we've heard from the neighbors on both sides of us that they want certainty as to the land use of this property, and the longer it drags out, the more uncertainty there is. And so, my view is that I think the residents want that certainty and are urging us to try to get this project moved forward to a decision as quick as we can. If it did get approved by the end of 2024, just to give you a sense of timing, and the housing market was still good, to give you a sense of like when it would get built out, we would do engineering and design maybe in 2025, and first model homes might be in the 2026 timeframe. So, maybe I'll finish up with, we do want to come back to APAC. We definitely want to work with the committees. I worked with a number of APAC committees in the past, including ones that Kathy Prevost sat on. And so, I have a lot of experience working with APAC and look forward to doing that. We're going to be out and meeting with other community groups. And then, maybe just one final point that next Tuesday night, right here in this room at 6 o'clock, the county is going to be holding a scoping meeting. And so, welcome everybody to be there, and I'll be there again to answer questions. And so, I'll be happy to answer questions or anything else the APAC chair would like.
I do have a question about the scoping meeting, and then I'll open it up to the room and our online members. The scoping meeting for Town and Country Village, different from a lot of scoping meetings I've been to in terms of that there was a presentation that was very scheduled. Previous scoping meetings I've come to is that their exhibits are out. You come in, you talk to applicant, you talk to consultants, talk to county staff, submit your questions, and that's pretty much it. And I know there's a virtual component to the scoping meeting. It'll be similar to the Town and Country where there's a presentation, and then the exhibits are just here as well.
Yes, so this scoping meeting is intended to have the exhibits that'll be in the room, some similar to what I have tonight, but more. And there will be county staff here, and will be here, and there will be a formal presentation. There's a PowerPoint presentation, and then after that, it will be opened up for questions. And then depending on who the right person is to respond, whether it's county staff, whether it's county consultant, or whether it's us.
All right, so are there questions in the room? I've seen hands go up. Okay, it's a foot race.
There was a lot of feedback on the prior projects, and one of the big things was road traffic. So you're proposing 918 units. Hopefully in your proposal, you have factored in things on Latrobe Road, as well as obviously closer to the big freeway interchange. So just a thought that would be really helpful. And then, not for you specifically, but when we did the Town and Country, I did a total of all the dwelling units so far that are under evaluation. And so with this one included now, there are 4,605 new dwelling units just within APAC review. And that's not counting Marble Valley, because I still don't know anything about that one. So just a reminder of the numbers of ADUs that we're looking at just for current projects.
Are you ready?
So I have a long history with our general plan and those things, so I bring stuff up that our county doesn't seem to want to acknowledge. So, when this area was put into the general plan, the whole concept was that you'd have this low impact business park with residential, and that was your kind of mix where the traffic leaving at 5 was opposite of the traffic coming in. So you had a balance of your traffic issue, traffic impact. also the night sky and jobs to housing. I mean, the chamber pushed to overhaul our general plan based on lack of jobs to housing. Was a lot of what was behind the push to do that. And inventory wise, we are losing these areas that provide housing and jobs. And that area was supposed to be low impact, high paying jobs that came for that community. So you have two large housing developments that are right there. It's not like they can't drive to, walk to work across the road there with a signal. So I'm concerned about the balance that was put into the general plan. And then I have another question. There was a lawsuit that was filed, and the organization won that lawsuit, and there was conditions. And I know that there was a development just recently approved for housing that violated that requirements of the lawsuit. And I don't know if your project is kind of covered also with that lawsuit. The county let them go ahead, even though the lawsuit said they couldn't put in housing in the last one that just got flipped. I'm not sure which that is.
Which one was it?
It's one of Angelo's projects. I don't know, did he just get something?
East Ridge?
Huh?
East Ridge?
No,
Brand new?
no, I think what Sue's referring to is the final phase of Carson Creek.
Okay.
And so Carson Creek was subject to a lawsuit, and the lawsuit, I don't know all the details. I know one of the factors of the lawsuit was that it needed to be an all active adult community. I don't know if it had a restriction on this last approval. I know I heard that.
I got emails over the whole thing.
Yeah.
From the asking to change the zoning and general plan. So, and they stated it was, they wanted to change it from the industrial to, research and development to
Yeah.
housing, which the county let them do it. And I don't know, I didn't have the bandwidth to find out. That lawsuit's not public, and most of these people have passed away that filed that. So I don't know if the area that you're proposing, that lawsuit covered that area also, or not.
It did not. That was a lawsuit against the Carson Creek specific plan, which came after the El Dorado Hills Business Park. And so our property was an original piece of the El Dorado Hills Business Park. It was basically the southern 210 acres of it. Sure.
Our county's always historically tried to be more locally sustainable. And when you start about commercial retail, those are low paying corporate developments. You talk about Starbucks, that takes money out of the community and sent back to these corporations. So I don't know if there's a way, when you're doing these things and considering this, that there's no jobs here. And if all we're doing is producing more really low wage, that's taking, just for an example, when they brought in Walmart into the Placerville area, that took $60 million a year out of the economy of the town of Placerville. And that's when they first did it, and who knows how much that is now. So I just, if in these thoughts, do you think, when you say you have all these, maybe laundromat and all those things, if it can be feasible for more of a local economy than the high-priced corporate stuff that comes.
Right, and I don't know the nature of this future commercial use. My guess is that national retailers are not going to want to go at this location this far away from, the main traffic patterns, especially like away from the freeway. So we imagine this would be more local business people opening small shops here.
We'll also be looking at the traffic impacts, because we did pass a law. We're still waiting for the county to implement it. So that's kind of high on our thing.
If I could offer, I'd be happy to sit down with you once we get our traffic study done and go through it with you and, get your take on whether it complies with Measure Y and Measure E. This property, it is zoned for research and development. Yeah, we looked at this, and talked to a number of the business park owners, and what we keep coming back to is there's plenty of land in the business park for future absorption, and that especially with the office market going the way it does, really a lot of vacancies. Office property prices are going way down. You can buy for way cheaper than you can build anything. That there's just not a future office market here. And so the only thing that's really going to happen here are industrial type uses, similar to like what PAC Trust has proposed out around the Tractor Supply. And so, we just don't see the market for that. And so anyway, we heard that, we saw the Transportation Commission's study. So anyway, that's just kind of the business view.
Yeah.
If I could just, being a stalwart vendor of the Carson Creek Pacific Plan, make sure that remains intact, because it is a very solid plan. It deals with a particular but a group of people, basically seniors, and the needs for those seniors. We have looked at that, certainly what's being proposed at the business park right now, including a lot of industrial related development that's come forward from PAC West that by some definition is very similar to the Amazon proposal in many ways. So there is, obviously issues and pushbacks on using the business park in that fashion. That'll come in future meetings as far as the uses from our community, and I believe from Blackstone's those meetings also with the wind investment folks. There's, I think, a general consensus that among all the possible land uses that are conceivable at this point, other than just leaving the land empty for cows and other critters to use, the housing development makes the most sense. And if you're going to go and assume that to be the case, then the issues are obviously mitigating environmental concerns, obviously protecting the Carson Creek Nature Preserve is something I'm very passionate about, but also the traffic. And I think we're going to be jumping ahead of a discussion later on the APAC Transportation Standing Committee and the activities that we're going to be looking at. We'll certainly be working with George and the team on really trying to figure out what the impact of his proposal, what PAC West is proposing, what Montana is proposing, and going as far as the Costco and the Town and Country situation. They're all interrelated, and they're all going to have impact on traffic. So that we can't afford to do piecemeal reviews.
Yeah. And I'll say again for the business park, for 25 years in the insurance industry, I was in the logistics industry, managing warehouses, and TRW, Georgia Pacific, Pride Industries here in Sacramento. And there was always an eye on the El Dorado Hills Business Park. Well, when's that going to spin out? Because there's an opportunity, right? We could get something there, build something custom. And even then, the idea from Business Park Association back then and the county was that they were looking for the back office, saying that you would get people out of the Bay Area for high tax, where it's not in an earthquake zone. There's more opportunity to have the employees live close by. And we looked at it. That's 3 different companies, and we were like, it's not happening. And I think it's unfortunate. They did not get absorbed at the rate that they had envisioned. But there are also challenges here in El Dorado County in that our utilities are expensive. Folsom is 5 minutes across the road. And even, up till recently, broadband over there was tough. I mean, DTS was in there and they were using, it was cable data 100 years ago. They struggled with what they needed, and, that's a business that invested heavily here. So,
They bought property that they knew what it was.
yes.
And it's like, I bought residential, I didn't expect to go there and turn it into investment. So it's just like, I think everybody should kind of have to play that thing.
Yeah, and I would say too on that though, but the consideration here that we look at in the community here is that it's been like 40 years and nothing's happened. It's just not, but
A lot more than what I initially saw. When I drove
Yes.
through it, I'm like, wow, they've really done a lot. To me, it has
Yeah.
grown.
well, and as the other side of that example is that our big customers, when I said Pride, Hewlett Packard, they really don't exist in Roseville and Rockland and Lincoln anymore. And all those campus buildings are being converted into housing. So they actually built it, used it for 10 to 20 years, and now they're not. So, yeah. So we appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss it. We have Eric's here online, unless there's somebody else in the room. Eric's been waiting for a while. I think Roger had his hand up, but Eric, are you ready to let us hear you? Eric, can you hear us? Back to Eric then. The other hand we have up is Monica. Monica, can you go ahead and unmute and we can listen to you?
Yes, thank you for hearing us out. I actually live directly across the street from where I just noticed the proposed commercial projects going to be going in. And I have questions and concerns about the stoplights that may or may not be used because I'm not seeing them on this plan. And I'm not sure what happened to all the people that were out here when we were dealing with Dermody, because we had some serious concerns about the light. Even Fish and Game had concerns because of our owls and some of our wildlife out here. But more than that, with the air pollution, we're substituting 1,200 big rig vehicles for, if we're doing 918 homes, about 1,800 cars that are going to be going up and down. Somebody comes home every day, I'm going to tell you, I can count on my hand how many times I've been road raged, passed, and I have to turn into a gated community. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like if somebody tries to put a light in there. And sound travels uphill. So if anybody would like to experience what that's like, please come over and visit with me or any of my neighbors. I feel like we addressed a lot of these issues, and I love the idea of this beautiful park, and I don't mind the idea of some homes going in. I get that we're going to have to rezone, if I'm not mistaken, if this does even move forward. My concern is if we did rezone, that we lose control of this project, especially those two areas that are for future use. I'd like to have a little bit more information on how bright the commercial spot is. It's literally across the street from my home. I'm not happy about this, but I'm more of the let's think about what's going to happen to our little creek right there and the coyotes I watch every day and the hawks that are flying. And I feel like we're kind of going back to 5 steps back from where we were a few months ago. So just expressing my concern on our community no longer being a dark community. I truly appreciate what we have right now. And I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish that with some of the items that are proposed. So I'm definitely going to need to hear more. And if the zoning is for research and development, what other options would we have if we didn't move forward with a project like this? Those are some of my concerns.
Thanks, Monica. I know, people were very concerned about the Project Frontier because that usage seemed to be sort of counter to what the R&D zoning proposed. But even as it's zoned now, if they developed it as R&D, they have the opportunity to develop things that might be similarly as impactful or less. But I think as we look at the transportation analysis when it comes in, there's sound analysis, there's the biological resources analysis. Those are all things that we'll be looking at as volunteers. And I encourage the community to participate with us and provide feedback and concerns and comments. Because, you know, we don't always know everything. It's things we think we know, maybe we don't. But no, I think it's valuable to have those voices be part of this conversation. So I would encourage you to, if you don't mind, to keep participating with us and maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you, Monica. Let's see, I think Eric doesn't have his hand up anymore. Eric, I'll go ahead and ask one more time. Did you want to jump in? Yeah, it looks like you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, I can't do it for you, Darnell. Okay, well, Eric's hand is down now. He might be going out and trying to come back in. Well, if he comes back in and we'll take his questions and we'll share them with you. Obviously, we'll have a recording of the meeting. But I want to thank you for being here tonight and for the opportunity. You know, we've always been engaged over, I mean, since 2017, 18, we've been talking about elements of this. So appreciate you coming here and sharing that. I was going to go ahead and throw up on the screen here so people remember that there is a scoping meeting, and it's a second scoping meeting technically.
It is, yes.
So, and that is next Tuesday in this room, 6 to 7 p.m. And there is a Zoom component that's linked here. We have it on our website as well, but maybe look at the slides there too. So we'll go ahead and move forward. And thank you for being here tonight. We have just some informational type things to share with everyone. Thank you. As we move through. So just some updates. We talked about this last month and a little bit the month before, the Latrobe Road Self-Storage Project. You know, we've talked about it quite a bit, but it's adjacent to the business park, Latrobe Road, Suncast Lane. We did submit a comment letter to the TAC meeting, and I think it was a little late, but we still did get it in. And we did hear back from them that they got our questions. And we did have some questions about the impact, obviously, to Carson Creek. After that, we had sort of looked at the other part in our letters here. It's posted on our website. We had some additional concerns that we looked at other self-storage projects that were in the community and talked to some of the other self-storage projects as they had their projects approved. And some of the items that we had probably have additional questions on. This proposal is we'll have outside doors into the storage spaces, whereas a lot of the more recent proposals, they didn't allow that. And I'm sure that those applicants would have liked that. It would have been more affordable for them to build their project. So they were required to have access by internal door walls. When you go into the facility, you have to go inside and then you access they're having access at the doors and you drive up, sort of the old conventional model of the self-storage. They have a lighted signage proposed, and they have a signage plan. And the other projects did not have a lighted signage plan. And then they're prohibited from accepting, I cannot read this from here, so let me hide this, from RVs. Although Folsom, Eldorado Hills, Folsom Self-Storage, Green Valley, and so Sophia Parkway, Shadowfax Lane, they're allowed to have RVs outside.
We're talking business park.
Yeah, but that was one, just in case somebody asked, that was one, they do have the RV on the inside of the project behind walls, but it's only for the initial phase of the project. As they build out their buildings, the RV storage and boat storage will go away. And there's another project across Sophia Parkway that it's an old self-storage. And then, you know, there are concerns about the RV storage because obviously there's gasoline, there's oils, grease, and things that could potentially, septic or tanks, the sewage tanks and stuff. So that could impact the Carson Creek. It's right there adjacent to the project. So just some things that could come up. We'll probably provide more comments and ask these questions as the project moves forward. So move on. We're getting late. So Central, we already talked about. We don't know. So what it comes down to, again, and John and George had mentioned, before the end of 2023. Maybe it will be in January. We don't know. We, as soon as we know, we'll share it on our website. We'll post it in our social media, and I'm sure I'll hear about it from somebody before I even post it. So move along from that. This is a unique one. Maybe I'll talk about this. There's a request in our homes to the El Dorado County Bond Committee for Melrose, essentially, to issue more bonds against the existing Heritage Melrose special tax, and that's the CFD 2014-1. They met on Thursday, the 14th. Bob was there. Thank you for being there, Bob. They recommended approval, and that it's going to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. Bond's expected to increase the special tax for Heritage Village homeowners only, and Heritage homeowners are pretty concerned. I know that there was a lot of discussion. We've been seeing going back and forth in an email chain, but is there anything you want to clarify on this? Because the Bond Committee is a very small group of individuals at the county.
Correct.
Auditor Harn's been keeping in contact with Residents Heritage and Bob specifically, and that's why Bob was there. Is there anything you want to?
Well, the fact that there had not been any kind of new bond proposal since 2018. At that point, there were probably a dozen heritage homes that have actually been built. Since then, we have nearly 1,000. So right now, we are in opening up our tax bill. We saw our pretty substantial Melrose bills. Obviously, a concern for a senior community, especially given the fact that so many of us are on fixed income, to now see a $6.5 to $8 million bond issue thrown up and impacting our future Melrose taxes is a concern. I've been assured by Joe Harn that the maximum increases annually would not be any more than 2%. I'm still trying to get the math in my head how an increase of the aggregate indebtedness is increased by 30%, but yet the increases to our own
Assessment,
our
yeah.
actual assessments 2%. Anyway, we're still trying to work that through, but it's obviously a concern, not only for us, but also just the whole concept of basically sticking people with 45 years worth of indebtedness to pay off something that perhaps should have been borne by the developer to begin with. But that's a philosophical question that I would hope that the new board of supervisors will take a very seriously look at the ethical nature of those kind of bond issues. But this one obviously is still up in the air and will become more as more facts are known. Joe Harn right now has been very open with us to provide out all the information necessary to at least move it down the road a little bit. So, yeah, absolutely.
So, are they still building in Heritage? They're still building there?
Well, we still have another about 150 home sites that's still in the current development. About 150 more home sites to be completed. Then in addition to that, the expanded Heritage 3, if you like, the one that you were referencing a few minutes ago that required a change in the specific plan, has another 409 homes. And those have not been constructed as of yet. So basically, we're talking a total of about 550 new homes.
In their development agreement and developing that in the first place, didn't they already set a bond fee for each of the homes? And
Well, I think if,
so are they need to do this for the new homes, or are they all the same?
No, this only impacts this bond issue only impacts. It does not include the new 400 and some homes the newly approved,
The original Heritage Project.
only the original Heritage Project. And, you know, there's lots of questions, Sue,
Yeah.
that remain unanswered. The fact is, we just learned about it on Thursday. I attended the meeting on Thursday. I actually didn't discover it until on Tuesday, and Joe said, well, by the way, we're having a bond advisory committee meeting on Thursday, and this is what we're doing. You guys might want to know. And I said, yeah, I do. So,
So I think what the approach is that their initial bond that was approved, because the county has to approve the formation, is that it was for X amount.
Yeah.
They didn't issue bonds to meet that, and now they want to.
Well, no, yeah, let's to be precise. The formation of the district, of the
CFD.
the CFD, was not to exceed 50 million total bonds. Up to, there were two bond issues that have occurred, one in 2016 for 12.8 million, and then in 2018, another 20 million. So that still leaves a delta of about 17 million that could be bonded out. But for what purpose, given the fact that the infrastructure has already pretty much been built out? So, you know, the real question is, what is the use of funds? And then ultimately, what's going to be the impact on the taxpayers there? So, and we haven't got the answers to either one of those yet.
So you now know what we know, or what we don't know.
Breaking news.
So moving forward, we talked about this last month. We had PAC West here, and they presented, you know, they have two buildings going in that we talked about, but there's still some concern about the Carson Creek R&D parcel split that they've talked about. The Gateway El Dorado proposal, which is a retail proposal just south of the Tractor Supply store, with a couple of drive-throughs, so quick service food, coffee shop, that type of thing. So they haven't squared that out yet, but the way it's sort of being looked at is it looks like they're separate projects, but really we think there's a lot of overlap and entanglements between them. We had asked a couple of questions to PAC West, and he seems to want to engage with us again, so we'll keep asking the questions until we get an answer about. We appreciate the fact that they came down. Actually they're based in Oregon, right? Oregon. He was actually here in El Dorado, talked to us last month. We still have concerns about the traffic, the air quality, the zoning consistency, the environmental parts of this. And so our transportation environmental and environment standing committees are still looking at this, and they're working hard. They just weren't ready to I mean, there's not enough there for them yet, but they're still looking at it. So
By the next meeting, I think we'll have something there.
yeah, and I know Roger is working on that as well. So, and then the one thing I wanted to finish up on, the quick quack car wash proposed for Santa Ridge behind the Safeway. It's a couple years old, and they had tried to reach out and talk to residents in the area, and I know they're trying to get some engagement. We had talked about it. We submitted questions primarily about the noise. It's a permitted use. The original plan for the commercial sites, because I got to turn around and look at it on left and right, on the right side, which is to the east, that residential development originally was supposed to be a second commercial development. They changed this in 2017 to get the Safeway to come in. They wanted more rooftops, so they skipped the other commercial center. But I had heard, and I live down Fast Life Road from this. I had heard from a lot of community members going, well, what's that sound going to be like? Because, you know, I honestly had been to the Quick Quack, above the Quick Quack at Green Acres in Folsom. It is an unholy roar when you're up at the top of that hill. They don't have any of the sound deadening devices installed there. And they did respond to us with their noise study, the sound study. We have it posted on the APAC website. They have some custom baffles and it's actually the air intake into the dryers, the blowers that make the most noise, not the air coming out, which I thought was okay. Engineers, right? But they did respond to that. And a couple more community members had asked questions. And then I heard from them, they wanted to know, you know, hey, can we organize a meeting in the community? Can we talk to them? The timing didn't work out for them because I think they're going to be at the Planning Commission, or they just were. I'm trying to have it backwards in my head. But I did talk to them on the phone, and we did a Zoom call and went through this. Here's the site. It's at the back of the Safeway. It's against Sienna Ridge Road. I think the proximity is like 100-something feet to the houses right there. They did their sound studies from 2 locations here, and they don't have it on this slide. They had another that was across the street. The 2 people that were the most upset about this have sold their houses and moved. And I hope they disclose it to the people that bought their house. And then the other members that I had heard from, like another half dozen people, they did not respond to me when I asked if they'd like to entertain some questions. So I'm assuming they're satisfied with this. I don't get the noise study. They're determining that the decibel over existing, and it is the back of the shopping center. It's pretty noisy to begin with, the trucks, refrigerators, 1 decibel increase. And it's not even a full decibel, and it's well within county standards according to what they have done here. So I call off their scientists. So you have to take some degree of, their expertise into consideration. The one thing they added that's different from all their other ones is that they have this little room at the end where the blowers are at. Normally, they're not enclosed to this degree. They went through especially and made this room. They have a ton of sound deadening material on the inside of this and the rest of the tunnel as well. And, the guy was pretty sincere when we talked about him wanting to be, obviously they have a subscription-based model for their customers, and they want to be good neighbors in that they don't want people not signing up for their subscription. So they seem to have worked a long time on this. And, Quick Quack is in a couple states. They're based in Roseville, and they're expanding like crazy. He did say that they probably are not doing the Quick Quack at Sophia Retail Neighborhood Center at Sophia and Green Valley Road. He says that that's probably not happening. It could still happen, but he doesn't see it happening moving forward. But it took a lot of time to get in a hold of him, and he had timing issues with his project during the Planning Commission. And Cindy worked very hard to arrange it so that we could talk to him. But I just wanted to update people that if the people I reached out to, they didn't answer me. So for our APAC audience, the guy was pretty engaged with letting us know what's going on. So I want to say it's the next Planning Commission meeting. So time-wise, it didn't work out for him to be here tonight. So the Serrano architectural and design review was it's the most rigorous one they've had. There are elements of the stacked stone that they don't have in any other of their facilities. It matches exactly the Serrano standard. So with that, if you want to submit public comments in advance of our meetings, you can email them into edhapac.comment@gmail.com, 5 p.m. before our Wednesday meeting, so 5 p.m. on Monday. So we can get them in and submit them either to the applicants, or we can maybe do some legwork and get some answers for people. But the question should be related to what we're talking about in the meeting. And then our next meeting is Wednesday, October 18th, 6:30 p.m. back here in this room. It will also be streamed on YouTube as we're doing now, and virtual via Zoom. So unless there's anything to go back to, I'm only looking at one person here. Okay. Well, then I'd like to thank everybody for staying late with us. Oh, late. Sorry. Man, I really tried. Thank you, George. Thank you, Gene. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody next month. It should be spooky. Spooktacular. Hey, we're in the clear.
Any help breaking down here?
I just put this stuff away. And we'll delay the meeting start, just have people come in normal time and let them come up and dance around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like the old trade show kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.